It's the truth about parenting.
Something needs to be real for us.
The truth is in the raw things that people don't talk about.
This journey is not for the weak.
Welcome to the Mama Jack podcast. Okay. Hi, Alisha. How are you?
I am doing well. How are you?
I'm good. So tell us about yourself.
My name is Alisha Carlson. I am in Oregon, so I think we've established we're kind of on opposite coasts. I have two kids, a 13 and a 16-year-old. I've been married for 17 years. We've been together for 20, so it's kind of fun. I'm at that tipping point where I've been with my husband longer than without him. We've got a couple of dogs. We're kind of like a part-time military family because my husband's in the guard. So we sort of straddle, both being kind of a civilian family, but also military family. As far as what I do, I am a non-diet lifestyle coach for women. So the non-diet piece is huge because that was a huge part of my journey, which I'm sure we're going to kind of get into a little bit, as that's definitely informed the way that I have approached food and whatnot with the kids. But, at the very end of it, it's helping women live a healthier, active lifestyle without it becoming a full-time job. A lot of diets and things like that in the past that they've done tend to be really restrictive, kind of taking over their life, and potentially not even modeling very healthy behaviors for their kids. And so for me, it's really important that it is a lifestyle and it's not just another diet that you're going on.
Yeah, that's amazing. So, what got you started into that? How did that come about in your life? Like, what inspired you to do this? Because I know there's probably
Yeah,
a story behind it, right? So, let's get to
there
the bottom
is.
of that.
So I grew up in kind of a unique family. Thankfully, I had a lot of extended family that was really willing and able to kind of jump in and help. My parents, I think on this side of it, I just choose to believe that they did the best they could with what they knew how. But it wasn't always the best environment. And so as a result of that, I spent a lot of time around my grandma on my mom's side and aunts. And I remember growing up kind of hearing a lot of what I would consider now like diet talk. So a lot about weight loss and needing to lose weight or making comments on other women's bodies or, always trying to be either dieting to lose weight or to keep the weight off. And so that was really a lot of what informed, I guess, my belief as a young girl in terms of like what was acceptable for a woman's body to look like. I think it really also kind of planted the seed that I should always be thinking about my weight. I should always either be trying to lose weight or keep it off. And that was interesting because even as a young girl, like I remember looking at a lot of my friends and feeling like my body is not the same as theirs. Like it always just seemed a little bit bigger, which granted, looking at it now, I don't think that I was like overweight by any means. It just, I didn't feel as skinny as my friends. And so I think for me, seeing that coupled with what I really was taught as a young girl, it kind of started me on this journey of feeling like, I was always trying to lose weight. I was always, kind of playing around with dieting and starting workout programs with the sole purpose of losing weight. And I kind of teetered, I would say I did the yo-yo thing throughout high school. And then really in 2007, the year that we were getting married, I was like, okay, I've got to figure out how to lose weight. I want to look good on our wedding day. I want to feel good. And so that really started me, I think, on like my fitness journey, but it was very much rooted still in the diet mentality around food, a lot of emphasis on what my body looked like, not as much on what it felt like, or even just like my relationship to food. So I lose the weight for the wedding. I'm able to kind of keep it off. I tell myself, okay, I don't want to be one of those moms that like lets herself go after every kid. I want to be in better shape. And, for a long period of time, I would say about 10 or so years, I was able to maintain the weight loss. But it started, I think, around 2016, 2017, ironically, when I had made the pivot out of hairstyling, went back to school, got my degree in coaching and exercise science. I get out, I start coaching from kind of the mainstream, here's the workout plan, here's the meal plan, a lot of emphasis on like low calorie. And I'm coaching women, I'm utilizing the same plan that I'm, setting up for other people. And they're feeling like a failure. I'm kind of feeling like a failure because it felt like, every few weeks I was kind of starting over. And I remember it was either late 2017 or early 2018. I'm standing in my kitchen. I've got the camera set up. I'm in a sports bra and shorts. And I'm taking before pictures again, right? Like I had lost, 4 or 5 pounds and then started to gain it back. And I just remember standing there feeling like a complete failure, feeling super discouraged, defeated, and just thinking like, what's wrong with me? Like, why do I find myself always kind of starting over? And for me, it was the whisper of the Holy Spirit that was like, it's because you've been dieting this whole time and calling it a lifestyle. And that really, for me, kind of stopped me in my tracks because it was like, oh my gosh, like that is so true. Like this whole time, if somebody would have said, are you dieting or whatever, I would have been like, absolutely not. Like, this is just my healthy lifestyle. But when I heard that, it really struck something in me to the point that it was like, okay, I need to take a step back. And that was really when, for the first time I'd ever even heard the term diet culture and was introduced to the anti diet movement and intuitive eating and health at every size. And so for me, that kind of, stopped me in my tracks. I made the decision that I'm not going to coach women this way anymore. This is not how I want to live my life. So I started, learning about all of these other things. And then as I started to even kind of go down that, that journey or that path, there were some things, that whether it was because these moves had, or these movements had been co-opted, there were some things that I was like, yeah, I just don't know that I 100% agree with that either, right? This idea that we can and should eat whatever we want to, whenever we want to, and it's not going to negatively impact our health. I just don't believe that. I don't think that the research out there even really supports that. So for me, it's been about, how do I help women find like a healthy, balanced lifestyle that doesn't feel restricted, doesn't feel deprived, really allows them to show their body respect and honor through food and movement, not as a means to an end, but really as a tool so that they can show up better in all areas of their life, whether that's their family, their marriage, their career. I certainly know that, and we were kind of talking about this, right? Hindsight is always 2020.
Yeah.
And when my kids were little, like I was very much in the throes of the dieting and being super consumed with food and my weight and my body. And so I've had to kind of course correct some of that and really change the conversation that we're having about food and weight and things like that. So that's a little bit about the journey. That's also kind of how it ties in a little bit to parenting and things like that as well.
Yeah. It's hard for parenting, and I had a coach on here. She was specifically prenatal, postpartum, like, nutrition, right? But it's different as you're a mom and you need other things, like, you said intuitive eating, right? Is that the term
Mhm.
you used? I need to learn more about that because I just quit smoking cigarettes and, like, literally just quit smoking cigarettes, and I lost the dopamine hit that I got from those cigarettes, and how am I finding it? Chocolate.
Food.
Chocolate, that's all I want is chocolate. I'm like, literally that evil mom that's, like, eating my kid's Easter candy. Like, I seriously and I'm like, I know there's other ways to do this, like, working out and stuff, yeah, like, I'm trying I'm, what's it called? working towards being able to do a 10K in July. So like I'm slowly building up working out again and everything like that. I know that increases dopamine, but I also know there's foods and other ways to do it. And man, do I need to know it right now because it's like it's funny. I've quit smoking so many times, right? When you're a smoker, I feel like most smokers have quit like at least 5 times before they actually quit. And it's always been like cravings that have brought me back to smoking, right? This time it is depression. Like
Mm,
it's insane. And I'm even on antidepressants because of like a mental breakdown I had um a year, almost 2 years ago now. And so it's shocking to me, but that's what happens. Like you quit smoking and the smoking, replaces the natural dopamine that your body makes. So when you cut it off cold turkey, you're not getting that. And I'm like, well, do I go back and like start to like slowly cut out smoking so my dopamine like goes back up? And I really don't want to do that. Like, it seems like an option, but, like, I'm afraid that I'm just gonna dive right into it again, right? And it's already been almost 2 weeks, but I know there's probably different ways of, like, adjusting my diet that would help, so I'm not binging on chocolate, but
mhm.
I'm helping myself in some way. Would that tie into anything? Like, just life changes, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think intuitive eating could be a helpful resource for you with this potentially, but the book that's actually coming to mind, and I wish I could say that I've read it, but I've heard great things about it, and it's called Dopamine Nation. And
Mhm.
so it talks about, kind of how dopamine plays such a big part in things and how, sort of the instant gratification lifestyle really is heavy on things that give us almost an artificial amount of dopamine, right? So, like when we're looking at sugar, chocolate, because that's what you mentioned specifically,
Yeah.
the smoking, the Netflix, the drinking, the porn, all of these different things, those give us such a high amount and concentrated amount of dopamine that a lot of the things that are more natural that give us dopamine, it doesn't come anywhere close to that. And
Mhm.
so, my understanding is that you almost have to retrain your brain to not rely so much on those heavy concentrated amounts of dopamine, but rather, really getting your dopamine from exercising again, from, certain foods and things like that. I think in terms of the craving, and I see this a lot with food, this very well could be a little different when it comes to smoking, but it's a lot of times the cravings, at least initially, feel so intense and it feels almost like this emergency. Like, if I don't do something, I'm going to explode. And so we either go back to the thing that we're trying to remove or we're trying not to do, or we end up replacing it with something else, which is what it sounds like you're doing here. And so, one of the skills that I like to teach my clients when it comes to food is how do we process a craving? How do we allow a craving without resisting it or distracting ourselves with something else that may not be necessarily like more beneficial, right? It's like, I mean, we could argue that potentially eating chocolate is a healthier move than smoking cigarettes,
Mhm.
but still, asking the question, is this ultimately in the long run going to be something that's beneficial or not? And if not, then let's learn how to have the craving, not let it control us, but also, be able to make a decision that really is going to honor the long-term goal that you have for yourself.
Mhm. And how do you feel about like I've seen before there's like foods that if you're craving sweets, you could be lacking in this, How do you feel about something like looking at something like that to solve it?
And I mean, I have heard that, right? Where it's like
Mhm.
sometimes cravings can be a deficiency in something
Mhm.
else. And so that's where I guess, taking a step back and doing maybe more of an audit on, okay, what does my nutrition look like overall?
Mhm.
And the things that I would say is that if you're eating more processed foods than not, then chances are, yes, there's some deficiencies happening there. Also, the other extreme is eating too clean and being super restrictive on some foods. You can also miss out on different nutrients and things like that. And then if you're not eating a wide variety, you're going to be missing out on nutrients, right? So it's like if you're always eating the same fruits and vegetables or the same grains or even the same proteins, then there's a high chance that your body's not getting what it needs from everything anyway. And then of course, like this is potentially a tangent, but also looking at, so first I would say, let's do an audit. Do we have a wide variety of things? And where is a majority of our food coming from? Is it more processed? Then we want to look at, moving away from that and adding in more whole foods, minimally processed. And then, after that stuff is kind of squared away, then you might look at adding in like a multivitamin. But I think sometimes in the West, we're like, oh, well, let's just supplement with it rather than like trying to fix it kind of at the root. And
Mhm.
I don't know that that's necessarily ideal or super beneficial either.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, just through I've been reading about like the chakras, right? I don't know if you're familiar with the chakras, but they say eat the rainbow. So that's what I keep in my head all the time is eat the rainbow, the veggies, the fruits, the anything you want to be eating that rainbow. Also my doctor just put me on like a semi-Mediterranean diet. So like eating fresh, right? And I used to be so good at this. And then you have a 2 and a 4-year-old and you're like, whatever I can chuck in my mouth. I need to eat something. Or it's like 4 o'clock and you're like, all I had
I
today
have
was
eaten all
yogurt.
day.
Like, oh my God. So I am trying to get better at that and going in and because I was so good at it for so long before I had kids, and then even a little bit after my first, but once the second one hit, man, it was like, "No, it's whatever I can eat," and I'll throw in some healthy things, but, like, yeah, I'm starting to I say, like, 1 a week, right? Change 1 thing a week, because I'm not a nutritionist, but I'm a trainer. I got my training through ACE, so I know this much about nutrition. But the way I always say, because I'm not a nutritionist, I'll tell people, well, I can't tell you what to eat. I can't tell you what's going to make this better or that better. But if you do want a healthier diet and you want a lifestyle change and not just to pop on a diet to go off to gain the weight back, I always recommended changing one thing you're already eating for a healthier option. So even if it's like sugar to honey, right? Or like um whole milk to 2% or oat milk or almond milk or anything like that. So that's kind of what I'm trying to do again is slowly integrate these things back into my life. Um but yeah, I got hit with the high cholesterol, which
And
I don't know. My mom says it just runs in our family. She's like, you can do all the things, see if it helps you. But most people in our family, no matter how much they worked out or anything, it was a genetic thing. We all had high cholesterol. And I'm like, I'm going to be the one to work out and eat right
yeah, to
and
figure it
put
out.
that
Yeah.
cholesterol back on track. I don't want to go on medicine, like I'm 38. I have so much longer to live. Like, I'm already on medication that I want to go off of eventually. I don't want to add anything else to it.
Yeah. And that's huge. I mean, so a couple things. I think one, with your kids being younger, as hard as it might be in some ways, like now is such a great time for you to be making some changes, not only for you, but how that's going to impact your kids and their like the way that they eat and their nutrition. It's finding ways that you can sneak vegetables in or introduce them and try cooking them in different ways to see how people like it, how everybody in your family likes it. As your kids get older, it's also great to start bringing them into the kitchen with you. And at every level, at every age, just about, they can be in the kitchen, they can be involved in some capacity, but then you're also kind of starting to teach them some of those things. And so I think that's huge. One of the things that really kind of kickstarted this for our family was my husband was, I think, mid-20s, maybe late 20s. I think hypertension, high blood pressure kind of runs in his family. And his doctor was like, we want to put you on, if things don't change, we're going to need to put you on some medication. And for me, this was when I was really kind of starting to get into the fitness and the nutrition and really the lifestyle medicine approach of like, let's do everything we can within our power in our lifestyle. And then if we need to still do the medication route,
I
then
love
thank
that.
goodness we have that as an option.
Mhm.
So, it is like really studying and learning what causes high cholesterol. What are some tangible, simple things that I can do? And this is an area that I definitely need to learn a little bit more about. But I do remember hearing at some point that it's been kind of a misconception in a sense that eating foods that are high in cholesterol, like especially the more natural foods like eggs, have gotten a really bad reputation because they are higher in cholesterol. But that kind of cholesterol doesn't negatively impact your blood cholesterol levels. And even, last week I was listening to a doctor talking about this. And he was like, and it also kind of depends what type of LDL you have, like the size of the cholesterol that's in your blood. If it's the fluffier kind, that tends to not be as dangerous as the stuff that's a little bit harder. That's more of like the plaquey stuff that starts to build up on the artery walls. And so again, I'm just thinking like, let's bump up fiber in the diet. Let's find foods that are really high in fiber. So again, that's your fruits, your veggies, certain grains like quinoa, chia seeds have a lot of fiber in them. So how can we bump the fiber up? Exercise is a great way to boost your HDL, which is, a potential health benefit against kind of the LDL stuff.
Mhm.
So
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. So how has this affected your children? Did they have anything to adjust to? Because I know you said like in parenting, you kind of learned this. So like how what did that look like for your kids? Because you said you were on diets after and then you switched. So did they have to go through a transformation? Was that like smooth with them? How old were they at the time? What did that kind of look like?
So when my daughter was born, I had already started my fitness journey. So I was running, I was doing kind of the clean eating thing. I think because of my propensity, just knowing a little bit about myself now, I think I very easily have the tendency to go into like eating disorder or highly disordered eating, right? Which is kind of a gradient. So I think the clean eating in general is great. What I noticed for me was it kind of sparked orthorexia. So being hyper vigilant about, trying not to eat anything processed. I felt a little bit of guilt and anxiety about giving my kids, things that were processed or that had certain ingredients in them. And, for the most part, I'm like, let's not eat a bunch of preservatives. I'm not a huge fan of seed oils and soybean oil and things like that. Um, so when I look back, it was like my kids always grew up with a lot of, we ate a lot of vegetables. They were introduced to a lot of variety very early on. We didn't eat a lot of processed dinners. And then I kind of transitioned from running and went more into the figure world, the bodybuilding, kind of the bikini competition stuff. And that was probably the point where I was like, okay, I'm eating something different than everybody at pretty much every meal. And I remember my daughter, at a few dinners, she'd be like, I don't want to eat this. I want to eat the steak and the rice and, what mom's having. And granted, the stuff that I was eating wasn't unhealthy. It was more the behavior of, okay, you guys are all eating this and I'm eating this. And so I think it was less about what I was eating and more about what that was maybe subconsciously teaching. And so it was kind of with that, I was like, okay, I want to be careful about this. I don't want my son to think that there's only one way that a woman's body should look and it should be super chiseled, super lean. I don't want my daughter to think that this is how her body has to look in order for it to be acceptable and beautiful. And so I made the decision to stop competing for them, but also for what it was doing to my mental health. My physical health suffered a lot. Um, and then, as I kind of journeyed into more of like testing the intuitive eating and, more of this like the anti diet approach, I will say there was a little bit of concern for me in teaching the kids and not regulating or not having any conversation around, we don't want to eat candy before we eat dinner. We don't want to, yeah, like we're just going to keep chips and candy and you guys can have as much of it as you want whenever you want to. That was some of the stuff that was kind of taught in intuitive eating and sort of this anti diet movement that I was like, yeah, I just don't know that I really can get on board with that. I mean, no, I don't want my kids to be afraid of food. I don't want them to, develop disordered eating or eating disorders. And also, like maybe having candy, as much of it as you want to throughout the day, potentially not, healthy either. So for me, I think the shift came like when I moved out of dieting, is it was not labeling foods as good or bad, but having the conversation of like, yeah, we can have the chips, we can have the candy, we can have, these sweets and treats, but we still want to eat them in moderation, right? And I want you to have some protein or a vegetable and then let's go and have this, right? So cuz I do still feel like there is that responsibility as parents to teach them to eat healthy, to eat well, with a diet that is not predominantly processed foods for long-term health. So I can definitely see how it's kind of changed throughout to sort of mirror as I've been figuring it out. It's like, okay, how do I want to talk to the kids about this? What do I want to teach them as I've been kind of going on my own journey as well?
Mhm. Yeah, and that's important. I've been my one kid is not good at eating anything. That's it. That's the full statement.
That's the story. The one kid is not good at eating anything.
If it's not snacks or and my other one, she will eat anything. Like she'll try
Yeah.
anything. She ate a seashell once and we had to go to the ER because she thought it was food.
Oh
I was
God.
like, Harlow, oh my God. Luckily nothing happened, but we did see the little pieces of seashell in her belly. I was like,
Oh my
God,
gosh.
girl, come on. At least eat food. Like we know you like to eat, but food, girl, food.
Yeah. Yeah. Oh,
So I've toyed around with like I make muffins and they're like, zucchini carrot or, there's like apple spinach ones that I make and they're actually good. And they're like made with all the good flours and no sweetener and stuff like that. And then I'm playing around more with like, the crunchy things they eat, trying to find a healthier version of that. Like, for instance, I just saw this TikTok. I think it was a TikTok and I saved it. It was somebody took chickpeas and they put seasoning on them and they evidently taste exactly like I wouldn't go the hot Cheetos route, but they taste like hot Cheetos and they're crispy when you eat them. So I'm like, "Oh, that would be good for like, chips," or he likes what's it called? Cheetos, which we don't keep in the house anymore. Cheetos, Doritos. I'm like, that's a hard no for me because after reading what's in them and stuff, and I don't shame anybody that gives their kids Cheetos or Doritos. Sometimes I want Cheetos or Doritos, but I think it's red 40, right? That's in that whole thing with the red 40. I really try to keep my kids away because I did notice a huge shift in
yeah.
his personality when
Behavior.
we took it out. So I try to keep at least that ingredient gone. Sometimes it slips in there, but it's stuff that he's not eating all the time.
Mm.
But my daughter, she'll eat a whole banana. She's been grabbing the bananas off of the center island and literally just ripping them open like a little monkey and sitting on the floor and eating them. I'm like, can we have one banana, Harlow? Do we have to steal the whole bunch and take 4 of them out?
So
So it's like I
funny.
have 2 little opposites, like and, I just keep trying, and my son, the older one that's picky, I try to have him work with me every time I make anything, like, get him excited, and he's slowly adding more. But I
Mhm.
actually, when talking to his OT, um, we are thinking it's a sensory thing more than anything, so it's gonna take him a little bit more of an adjustment than just like, "Oh, this is healthy and not healthy." It's actually how it feels in his mouth, so we have to get him used to
Yeah.
a bunch of stuff, which is something I'd like to call out for people to understand too. Just because your kid doesn't wanna eat, they say that a lot of the reason is if they have a sensory issue or sometimes just in general, like, with the processed foods like boxed macaroni and cheese, Cheetos, Doritos, you're gonna get the same thing every time. When you make it from scratch, it's gonna be different. Apples look different when you get them every time. Bananas look different when you get them every time. So it's sometimes the kids will be turned off because it doesn't look the same, or that's why they like
Mhm.
bananas one day and the next day they're gonna cry if you put one in front of their face. It's like discouraging, but yeah, not giving up, because I gave up, because I was
Yeah.
like, "I just want my kid to eat anything, like, as long as he's eating,"
Yeah.
'cause he was skinny and we were, like, panicking, so now we have to relearn all of that, but
Yeah, and I think you bring up a good point. I mean, it can be frustrating to feed kids, period. But then if there are sensory issues or different things happening, if they're neurodivergent in some way and that can impact it, it's giving yourself an extra measure of grace and the child as well, and being a little bit extra patient about, okay, we just have to kind of figure this out. Like, how do we make this work for the child? And recognizing that that might look different day to day or even week to week.
Mhm.
I think you bring up a good point with the dyes. And when you said to eat the rainbow, ironically or like coincidentally, I did one of my projects for chemistry was about food dyes and using natural dye as an alternative. And when we look at other countries and how they're dyeing their foods, they're not using the the fake dyes that we're using, like the red dyes, the yellow, the blue, the
Mhm.
green, that gives all of this fake food or this, highly processed food the color, right? They're using different things like algae and the beta carotene and beet juice and things like that. And again, it's not demonizing the food specifically, but recognizing that big food exists just like big pharma exists. And they want to keep people eating as much of their food as possible. So it's highly palatable. It's super easy to overeat it without even recognizing it, because your body, the part that kind of is checking to see how much energy is coming in, these hyper palatable foods blow right past that, which is why you could eat an entire bag of potato chips. But if I were to put the same amount of potatoes in front of you and be like, okay, eat these, you would be like, I cannot eat, 10 or 20 or 30 potatoes in one sitting. But yet you could very easily, power through an entire bag of chips. So I think, at the end of the day, one of my goals is to help people be wise consumers. So, yes, if you want to have those foods, the chips and the cookies and things like that on occasion in moderation, but recognizing that it's very intentionally manufactured. I mean, they have food scientists that,
Yeah.
make these foods the way that they do to keep people eating them and to give our brains that huge hit of dopamine so that we want to keep eating them. And our brain remembers, like, oh yeah, when we were super stressed and super anxious, those Cheetos made us feel really good. Granted, it might have been in the moment or it might have been for a certain period of time, but then looking at, what's potentially the long-term consequence or outcome if we, eat those maybe more than what would be considered healthy. And I know some people will argue that it's like never healthy to have highly processed food. That may be true, but unless you're like really committed to that and it doesn't turn into an unhealthy obsession like the orthorexia, it's probably not super realistic for most people to never have, Cheetos or a Coke or something like that
Yeah.
again.
Yeah. It's all like in moderation to how your body feels. And the funny thing is like if you eat cleaner and cleaner and cleaner, you're gonna have that Coke and you're gonna feel hungover almost after having that Coke because your body's gonna be like, what is this? And I feel like you're less likely to go for the Coke and the stuff that's actually bad for you. And I'm speaking from experience. Like I remember, when I was eating clean and then I would get like, I got pregnant. And I was like, I'm craving cake. So I got cake and it made me feel like crap. Like literally
Mhm.
made me feel horrible. And it wasn't the pregnancy, it was the sugar. And I
Yeah.
literally, my body was just like, nope, nope, we're not eating this. We're not having it. Cause I was so used to eating all the things that were better for me. And yeah, it's just, it's such a great thing to think about, and I think people look at it as being such a burden, but you have this one vessel, right? So
Mhm.
why wouldn't you want to take care of it as much as you can? Um,
Yeah.
and it improves your mood, it makes you get out of bed easier in the morning. There are so many upsides to just changing little by little. It doesn't have to be this like huge dive into something, like just tiny bits at a time.
Yeah. And, simple things to think about is just like increasing water intake. So just checking in, like, how much water am I drinking? Maybe it's starting there. Maybe it's adding one vegetable a day or, having a little bit of vegetable with each meal or, like, I mean, you said it earlier, it's just making one tiny swap or adjustment or change a week. Um, and just practicing, right? Recognizing like it's not about doing it perfectly. You're not a bad parent if, you're still eating boxed mac and cheese. Um, but I think, again, hopefully just encouraging the parents listening to this, do some research, learn about some of the stuff that they're putting in our food in America. Why are they making, like you have Lucky Charms or Skittles or something like that has a certain set of ingredients that hits the American market. You look at the Skittles that are being sold in the UK and other countries, and they do not have the same ingredients. Why is that? Right? So it's like, again, just arming yourself, doing some of your own research, learning about it, and making hopefully a little bit more, I mean, I would say educated decision, but just like arming yourself with that information so that you're making your choices, knowing, having different facts and things like that.
Yeah, ordering your candy from the UK. I'm kidding.
Yeah. I
I'm
mean,
kidding.
order a huge box or go in on it with your friends so that you guys can split the absorbent shipping costs on it. But yeah, get your Skittles, get your breakfast cereal from the UK market.
That's so funny. Well, thank you so much for this. Is there anything else that you wanted to talk about?
I don't think so. I mean, I think we covered a lot. I mean, I guess at the end of the day, I think especially as the moms, like we tend to be the ones that kind of set the tone for the family. And so doing a little bit of reflection on your own relationship to food or to your weight or the way that you're eating and living your life and seeing, is this like, I mean, is this going to benefit my health? Like if you're wanting to be around for your grandkids and whatnot and live an active life until your end of days, is what I'm doing now going to allow me to do that? And then how I'm living my life potentially impacting my family, either for the benefit or also kind of the flip side to that. And then just making some small changes. But I think, really doing some of that reflection is going to be huge and just looking at those small changes consistently, not perfectly. It's just always making the next best choice.
Nice. I love it. Well, thank you so much. And we'll have all your information in the show notes. So If you're looking for any of Alicia's information, just look at the description. And so thank you so much for being with us today. It was a pleasure. I
Thank
learned a
you for
lot.
having me.
I learned a lot, especially to buy my snacks and candy from the UK.
I mean, the activist in me is like, and also reach out to the food companies
Mhm.
and write letters, like ask them, why
Yeah.
is it that you're doing this one way over here, but yet here we're doing it another way? I mean, that is one of my goals, is to see it change from the top down, right? It's like, yeah, we should be informed consumers and, vote with your dollar and all those things. And I think put the pressure on some of these companies to have to answer for, why is it this way here and it's this way here? Why are you not doing it the same way everywhere? So if you have that little bit of like activist spirit or like that, I want to see big change happening, then I would encourage you to reach out to some of those companies and ask them the questions and see. I mean, maybe you probably won't get a response, but I would like to think that if enough people did it, the shareholders would sort of put the pressure on those companies to start answering.
Yeah, right. We need a viral video that shows everybody. I think there has been enough. There's probably documentaries out there too by now, but just not enough push yet. Not enough
Yeah.
push. We'll
Yeah.
get somebody, I have faith that we'll get somebody into power that cares about our health, that will change all of this crap for us. Oh, come on. We should be
Yeah.
able to, I mean, not to ramble, but the one thing that always gets me is when you see the people that go to like Spain or Italy, right? And they're eating constantly and they're like, I lost 10 pounds on this 2-week trip and I've ate double what I eat in the US. And it's like,
Or they ate the exact same types of foods. That's where it tells you it's not necessarily always what you're eating, but it's what's in it. How is it processed? What
yeah,
was taken out of it and then added back into it?
yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so check your labels and yes, thank you so much for being on here. It was
Thank
fun. I love
you.
talking about food. Now I'm like, what am I eating for lunch?
Get some protein, some veggies, and some fiber in first, and then eat everything else.
Nice. Yeah. I have some spinach. Maybe I'll do something with that. Not just eat it plain. I don't know. Throw it in some
Yeah.
eggs.
That would not be my favorite way to eat spinach, is just by the handful.
I put it in smoothies a lot because you can't really taste spinach. So it's like just throw it
Mhm.
in with fruit and yogurt and granola and all that good stuff and get a whole meal in that one chug. But
Yep.
thank you so much.
Thank you. Bye.
Welcome to the end of another episode of the Mama Jack Real Raw Parenting Podcast. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Remember, parenting is a journey filled with ups and downs, and it's okay to make mistakes along the way. The Mama Jack Podcast is here to provide you with support, guidance, and real life stories from fellow parents who are navigating the challenges of raising children. If you have any questions, topics you'd like me to cover, or stories you'd like to share, please reach out to me. I love hearing from my listeners and incorporating your experiences into future episodes. You can find me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Podpage, all under the Mama Jack, TheMamaJac. Thank you for tuning in. Remember, you're not alone in this journey, and together we can create a supportive community of real, raw parents. Stay tuned for more episodes filled with laughter, tears, and everything in between. Until next time, keep being the amazing parent that you are.